It was an ordinary Tuesday evening when Captain Michael Johnson, a seasoned police officer with over 2 decades of experience in the force, decided to take a longer route home through the city. His mind was partly on the day's cases and partly on the dinner plans he had promised his wife. The streets were slick with a recent rain, reflecting the city lights in a kaleidoscope of colors. As Michael maneuvered his unmarked black sedan through the bustling streets, he noticed a patrol car shadowing him closely. Initially, he thought little of it, assuming the officer was just heading in the same direction. However, as he turned down a less crowded avenue, the patrol car's lights flashed brightly in his rearview mirror, signaling him to pull over. Sighing, Michael steered his car to the side of the road. He turned off the engine and waited, hands on the steering wheel. He knew the drill all too well, though it had been years since he'd been on this side of a traffic stop. Officer Rick Dalton, a relatively new addition to the force, stepped out of the patrol car with a stern look plastered across his face. The young officer approached Michael's vehicle cautiously, his hand resting on his holster. Rick had been keyed up all day after a morning briefing that highlighted an increase in car thefts in the area. As he reached the driver's side window, Rick shone his flashlight into the car, briefly blinding Michael. "License and registration, please," he demanded, his tone more accusing than inquisitive. Michael nodded, reaching slowly for his wallet to show his badge alongside his driver's license. "Officer, I think there's been a misunderstanding," he said calmly, holding up his badge for Rick to see. Rick's eyes widened momentarily as he took in the gold shield and the name inscribed below it. Captain Michael Johnson. A flush of embarrassment colored his cheeks as he realized his grave mistake. However, his initial shock quickly morphed into suspicion. "This could be a fake. You need to step out of the vehicle," Rick insisted, his voice betraying his nervousness. Michael complied, stepping out into the cool night air. He stood tall and composed, his expression unreadable. "Son, I'm a captain with the 34th Precinct. You can call it in if you need confirmation," he suggested, his voice even but firm. Rick hesitated, then reached for his radio to call dispatch. The line crackled to life as he relayed his location and the name on the badge. The dispatcher's reply was swift and tinged with a hint of incredulity. "Confirming, Officer Dalton. Captain Johnson is indeed with the 34th. You are clear to stand down." The young officer swallowed hard, the gravity of his mistake sinking in. He looked up at the captain, his eyes apologetic. "I'm really sorry, sir. I didn't recognize you. It's dark, and I'm just trying to do my job," he stammered, his voice low. Michael regarded him quietly for a moment, his gaze intense, yet not unkind. "Officer Dalton, doing your job involves more than just following procedures. It's also about judgment and respect. Let's take this as a learning opportunity." The tension between them ebbed slowly as Rick nodded, absorbing the weight of Michael's words. "Yes, sir, thank you, sir. I appreciate your understanding," he said earnestly. Michael nodded, his earlier annoyance softened by the officer's genuine remorse. "Drive safely, Officer Dalton, and remember, we're all on the same side." As he got back into his car, Michael couldn't help but reflect on the encounter. It was a stark reminder of the challenges and misunderstandings that often plagued their work. He started his engine, a new resolve forming within him to address these issues more vigorously within the force. As the night swallowed the last of the sunset, Michael drove off, the city lights blurring past. Tonight was a reminder of the complexities of their roles and the ever-present need for empathy and understanding, even among their own. Just as the city skyline began to merge into the darkness, Captain Michael Johnson's phone vibrated insistently in the console beside him. He glanced at the screen. Detective Lisa Monroe was calling. Known for her keen instincts and thorough investigations, Lisa rarely rang this late unless the matter was urgent. "Johnson," he answered, his voice steady despite the lingering thoughts from his recent stop. "Captain, we need you at the scene. There's been a shooting, multiple victims." Lisa's voice was brisk, underscored with a strain that Michael knew all too well. His heart rate picked up as he processed her words. "Location? East 19th near the intersection with Larkspur. It's chaos here, sir. Looks like a gang altercation, but civilians are involved." Michael's brow furrowed. That area was a known trouble spot, but the violence had escalated alarmingly in recent months. "On my way," he replied, flipping the sedan around in a swift U-turn and accelerating towards East 19th. As he drove, the radio crackled with updates, a cacophony of codes and voices that painted a grim picture of the incident. Michael's mind raced, planning his approach, considering the safety of his officers and the community. He arrived to find the street bathed in the harsh glow of emergency vehicle lights. Police officers cordoned off the area, their faces etched with concentration and concern. Beyond them, paramedics attended to the wounded, their movements both swift and delicate. Lisa met him at the perimeter, her notepad in hand. "We've got 2 dead, 5 injured. Witnesses are scared and uncooperative. We're trying to piece together what sparked it, but it's messy." Michael nodded, taking in the scene. His eyes scanned the area, noting the bullet casings scattered on the pavement, the shattered glass from nearby storefronts, and the blood-stained sidewalks. Each detail was a piece of the puzzle, each one crucial to understanding the full scope of the tragedy. He moved towards the witnesses, a mix of locals and bystanders who hovered on the fringes, their expressions a blend of fear and curiosity. One by one he approached them, his demeanor calm and reassuring. He needed them to trust him, to share what they had seen, to help prevent another such occurrence. Meanwhile, Lisa and her team canvassed the area, collecting evidence, photographing the scene, and marking everything with precise care. They moved through their tasks with a practiced efficiency, each step methodical and purposeful. As Michael spoke with a young man who hesitantly pointed out a nearby alley where 2 suspects had fled, his radio buzzed again with incoming information. More units were en route, and the local media had caught wind of the incident. The situation was evolving rapidly, demanding his full attention and skill. With each passing moment, the puzzle grew, the story of the night unfolding in whispers and shouts in the silent evidence left behind. Michael knew this was just the beginning of a long night, one that would demand all his resources and resolve. Night deepened over East 19th as Captain Michael Johnson coordinated the expanding investigation. Lights from police cruisers and ambulances cast long shadows across the street, creating a stark contrast against the darkness that enveloped quieter corners of the scene. Detective Lisa Monroe approached with an update, her footsteps echoing slightly on the concrete. "We found shell casings in the alley and a handgun tossed in the dumpster. It's been fired recently. Might be our missing link to the shooter." Michael acknowledged this with a nod, his mind already racing ahead to the next steps. "Get it to the lab, ASAP. I want forensics on it by morning." Lisa hurried away to relay his orders, her figure momentarily merging with the others, bustling about the scene. Meanwhile, Michael turned his attention to a group of officers, setting up a digital map of the area on a portable screen. They pinpointed key locations, where the victims had fallen, where witnesses were standing, and potential escape routes. An officer from the tech unit brought up surveillance feeds from the neighborhood security cameras. The screens flickered as they tried to isolate moments leading up to the shootout. Every frame could hold the key to unraveling the night's events, every angle offering a new perspective. A local resident, an elderly woman with a stern face, hesitantly approached Michael. She clutched a bathrobe closer around her as she spoke, her voice a trembling whisper. "I saw 2 young men running through that alley. They looked scared, desperate." "Thank you," Michael responded, ensuring his voice conveyed gratitude and confidence, hoping to strengthen her trust in their efforts. He motioned for an officer to take her statement in full, knowing every small detail could create a clearer picture of the suspects. As more data streamed in, Michael stood back, allowing his team to process the scene. His experience taught him the importance of oversight, of knowing when to step in and when to let his officers do their jobs. The street was quieter now, the initial chaos giving way to the meticulous rhythm of investigation. Forensic lights scanned the pavement, revealing traces invisible to the naked eye. Each finding was meticulously logged, categorized, and analyzed. From a distance, the flicker of camera flashes punctuated the night, a reminder of the media's watchful eyes on the perimeter, eager to capture the narrative unfolding under the harsh lights. Michael was aware of their presence, prepared for the inevitable questions that would come once the barricades were lifted. As the night marched on, East 19th transformed from a crime scene to a hive of investigative activity, with Michael Johnson at its core, orchestrating the search for truth amidst the shadows. As dawn teased the horizon with hints of light, fatigue became tangible among the officers at the scene on East 19th. Captain Michael Johnson, however, maintained his vigilance, pacing the perimeter with a keen eye for any oversight. Detective Lisa Monroe joined him, her face reflecting the night's toll, yet her eyes sharp with resolve. Forensics just called. The handgun's registered to a local, but it was reported stolen 2 weeks ago. They're rushing the prints and DNA. Good, Michael responded curtly, processing this new thread. Have we got anything from the canvassing team? They're still compiling witness statements. Several mentioned a dark sedan speeding away just after the shots were fired. Nodding, Michael gestured for the information to be added to their digital map. Each piece of data was a beacon, guiding their path through the murky details of the case. A junior officer approached tentatively, holding out his phone to display a still frame from a security camera. Sir, we isolated this image. It's grainy, but you can see 2 individuals in the alley right before the gunfire. Michael studied the image, noting the build and attire of the figures. Enhance this and circulate it. Someone might recognize their clothing or stance. As they expanded their search parameters, an urgent call came through on Michael's radio. Another incident, a burglary in progress, was unfolding not far from their current location. His immediate reaction was to assess priorities quickly. Lisa, take over here. I need to respond to this new call. Keep me updated on any developments. With a brisk nod, Lisa reassumed command of the scene, her focus unswerving as she directed the continuation of their meticulous work. Michael sped towards the reported burglary, sirens piercing the quiet of the early morning. Arriving at the location, he coordinated with the responding units, setting up a perimeter and preparing to apprehend the suspects. Inside the targeted store, shadowy figures scrambled toward the back exit, unaware of the police presence outside. As they burst through the door, Michael and his team were ready, detaining them with swift precision. One of the suspects, breathless and wide-eyed with panic, blurted out as he was handcuffed, "We didn't shoot anyone, I swear!" Michael paused, the statement catching him off guard. "Were you involved in the shooting on East 19th? He probed, his voice steady but intense. The suspect shook his head, his eyes darting nervously. No, but we heard things. People are talking. It was supposed to be a message, some gang thing." Recording this, Michael radioed Lisa. "I might have something here. I'll bring them in for questioning." As he escorted the suspects to the cruiser, his mind churned with the implications of the suspects' words. Each lead, each snippet of overheard conversation was a potential key in the sprawling puzzle of citywide violence. Back at East 19th, the sun climbed higher, casting light on the remnants of the night's chaos. The day crew arrived, taking over from those who had weathered the long hours of darkness. Michael headed back, his thoughts on the complexities of the case that continued to unfold with every passing hour. Morning light spilled over the city, illuminating the streets and washing over the remnants of the night's turmoil. Captain Michael Johnson returned to East 19th, his mind preoccupied with the burglary suspect's unexpected revelation. Upon arrival, Detective Lisa Monroe greeted him, her expression drawn but focused. "We've had some breaks. A local shopkeeper provided security footage clearer than what we had. It shows the alleyway in full view minutes before the shooting." "Let's see it," Michael directed, following her to the mobile command unit where officers huddled around various screens. The footage was paused on a frame showing 2 figures in the alley, one handing something small and dark to the other. As the video played, their movements were furtive, hurried, aware of their illicit dealings under the cover of darkness. "Zoom in on that exchange," Michael instructed, pointing to the screen. The image blurred momentarily as it enlarged, then stabilized enough to discern finer details. "Looks like a gun handoff," one of the techs muttered, adjusting the controls to enhance the resolution. While the team dissected the new footage, Michael's radio buzzed with an update from the station. "Captain, the suspects from the burglary are ready for questioning. They seem eager to talk, possibly looking to deal." "Understood. I'll be there shortly," Michael responded, his thoughts already shifting to the interrogation strategies he would employ. Leaving the command unit, he drove to the precinct, formulating questions designed to unravel the suspects' knowledge about the gang conflict implied in their earlier outburst. The precinct buzzed with activity, officers and detectives navigating the complexities of their respective cases. In the interrogation room, the burglary suspects, two young men, barely adults, sat cuffed and anxious. Michael entered, his presence commanding yet not threatening, designed to encourage cooperation. "Start from the beginning. Why mention the shooting? What have you heard?" Michael's voice was calm but insistent, cutting through the suspect's nervousness. One of the suspects, looking more resigned than his counterpart, sighed before speaking. "Look, we know people, okay? Heard some guys talking about making a statement to a rival. It wasn't supposed to hit innocents." Michael noted every word, each piece adding depth to the emerging picture of gang rivalry and reckless aggression. "Names. I need names and places," he pressed, his gaze unwavering. The suspect hesitated, then began to divulge details. Names of local gang members, places they frequented, potential hideouts. Michael listened intently, aware that each fact brought him closer to preventing further violence. After gathering sufficient information, he concluded the session. "We'll verify this. If you're straight with us, it'll help your case." Exiting the room, Michael contacted Lisa to relay the new intelligence. "Looks like we're dealing with an escalation in gang tensions. I've got leads on some names and hangouts. Coordinate with gang units. Let's move fast." As he ended the call, his resolve hardened. The day's discoveries opened new avenues for investigation, each step forward revealing more of the city's hidden battles. With each lead pursued, the network of violence and retaliation grew clearer, sketching a map of conflict that needed careful navigation. The precinct hummed with the focused energy of officers and detectives piecing together the sprawling narrative of gang rivalry that had spilled onto the streets. Captain Michael Johnson stood at the center of this hive, orchestrating the flow of information that streamed in from various sources. Detective Lisa Monroe updated him with a rapid succession of developments. Surveillance teams spotted one of the named suspects near the docks. He's been seen talking to known members of the East Side Kings. "Keep tabs on them, but no engagement yet. We need more before we can move," Michael directed, aware that premature action could spook their targets and jeopardize the investigation. In another corner of the room, tech specialists worked to enhance audio from wiretaps recently placed on several high-priority suspects. Every snippet of conversation was potentially crucial, revealing the inner workings and plans of the gangs involved. Michael stepped into the makeshift audio lab, his ears tuning into the fragmented discussions that crackled through the speakers. "Any mentions of East 19th or plans for further actions?" he inquired, his focus sharp. One technician nodded, adjusting a dial to isolate a particularly garbled section of dialogue. "Here, they mention a meetup later tonight. It sounds like they're planning to consolidate territory." "Location?" Michael's question sliced through the static-filled room. "Still working to pin it down. They're cautious, using code and switching locations last minute," the technician explained, his fingers flying over the keyboard as he worked to track down the elusive details. Acknowledging the update, Michael left the lab and headed to the strategy room where maps and charts covered the walls. Each location marked on these maps represented a thread in the complex web they were attempting to untangle. Lisa joined him, her phone in hand. "I've got confirmation on the meetup spot. It's at an old warehouse on 5th and Main. Surveillance is setting up there now." "Good work. Let's make sure we have eyes on all exits. No one moves in until we have a solid ID on all parties present," Michael instructed, his mind racing through scenarios and contingencies. As preparations for the evening's surveillance ramped up, Michael took a moment to step outside. He breathed in the cool air, letting the calmness of the outside world momentarily cleanse the intensity of the investigation. Returning inside, he was met by an officer carrying a stack of reports. "These just came in. Tips from the hotline. Might be related to our case." Michael scanned the reports quickly, his practiced eye catching key phrases and names that meshed with their current leads. Each report was a piece of the puzzle, and as they added up, the bigger picture began to materialize. With night approaching, the team was poised for a crucial phase of their operation. Michael checked in with each unit, ensuring readiness and mental sharpness. The upcoming hours could prove pivotal in their quest to dismantle the network of violence that threatened the peace of the city. Steeling himself for the challenges ahead, Michael returned to the heart of the precinct to oversee the final preparations. As the sun set, casting long shadows through the windows, the team's resolve solidified, ready to face whatever the night might bring. Under the cloak of dusk, the streets whispered with the hushed tones of an impending showdown. Captain Michael Johnson monitored the progress from the precinct, his team's positions relayed through hushed radio transmissions. The target warehouse loomed large on the digital maps displayed across the screens in the command center. Detective Lisa Monroe reported from the field, her voice a low crackle through the comm system. Teams are in place around the perimeter. No movement observed yet, but lights are on inside the warehouse. Maintain positions and keep me updated on any changes, Michael directed, his gaze fixed on the surveillance feeds, streaming live footage. The command center was a flurry of activity. Officers coordinating efforts, tracking incoming data, and maintaining a detailed log of the operations timeline. Michael's experience had taught him the value of patience in such situations. Timing was crucial, and haste could jeopardize months of careful planning. A tech officer flagged a new development on one of the secondary monitors. "We've got a convoy approaching from the west. Looks like several vehicles. Heat signatures indicate they're full. Track their route. Let's see if they head for the warehouse," Michael said, a strategic edge to his voice. The room tensed as all eyes followed the convoy's progress on the screen. Simultaneously, a tactical unit officer approached with a handheld device showing drone footage. "Aerial visuals coming in. We have rooftop positions covered as well." "Perfect. Keep the drone in hover mode out of audible range. I want eyes in the sky in case they attempt to flush out," Michael instructed, his commands precise. As the convoy neared the warehouse, the tension in the command center spiked. Lisa's next call confirmed their suspicions. The convoy stopped at the warehouse. "We're seeing multiple individuals disembarking." "Visual confirmation on targets?" Michael queried, his focus unyielding. "Stand by." Lisa paused, a brief silence falling before she continued. "Confirmed. We have visual on 3 high-value targets, including the suspected ringleader." "Monitor only. Wait for my signal." Michael's command was clear, ensuring no premature engagement. In another part of the room, an intelligence analyst relayed updates from a network of informants. "Word is there's significant unrest among the ranks. Tonight could be a power play." Noting this, Michael weighed the implications. Such internal dynamics could shift the landscape of gang leadership and either escalate or diffuse the current tension. Throughout the night, updates flowed into the precinct like tributaries into a great river of information. Michael stood steadfast, a sentinel coordinating the flow of data, ready to act on decisive moments. As the meeting in the warehouse unfolded, hidden microphones picked up fragments of heated discussions. The tech team worked diligently, filtering ambient noise to clarify the recordings. "Anything actionable?" Michael asked after a particularly indistinct snippet. "Still cleaning it up, but there's mention of expanding territory and potential hits on rivals," one tech replied, her fingers deftly adjusting the equipment. Acknowledging this, Michael prepared to make critical decisions that could dismantle a major threat to the city's fragile peace. His watchful eyes and strategic mind guided the night's complex operations, each officer under his command an extension of his will to safeguard the community. The night deepened as Captain Michael Johnson orchestrated the surveillance of the warehouse from the precinct's command center. His focus remained razor-sharp, every new piece of information meticulously processed and integrated into their ongoing strategy. Detective Lisa Monroe continued her steady stream of updates over the radio. Individuals inside appear to be dispersing within the building, possibly to secondary meeting points. "Keep a visual on all exits. No one leaves without being identified," Michael responded, his tone even but authoritative. On the digital screens, the layout of the warehouse was displayed in high detail, each room and exit clearly marked. Officers stationed around the perimeter relayed real-time updates, their voices a constant undertone in the busy command center. A tactical advisor approached Michael with a tablet showing live drone footage. "We have movement on the roof. 2 figures, possibly lookouts. Adjust the drone's position for a closer look, but maintain noise discipline," Michael directed, his eyes not leaving the screen as he observed the figures moving cautiously along the rooftop. The command center was alive with the low hum of whispered conversations and the clicking of keyboards as officers and technicians continued to gather and analyze data. Monitors displayed various angles provided by surveillance cameras and the drone, offering a comprehensive view of the warehouse and its surroundings. An officer specializing in communications interception handed Michael a headset. "We've patched through audio from inside. It's fragmented, but we're pulling out key phrases now." Michael listened intently, the grainy audio painting a partial picture of the discussions happening within the walls of the warehouse. Mentions of territories and future plans were interspersed with static and unrelated dialogue. "Filter through the noise. I need clear leads," he instructed, handing back the headset as he turned his attention back to the surveillance feeds. The room's atmosphere was charged with a controlled urgency as each team member played their part in the unfolding operation. A logistics officer updated the room's main whiteboard with timestamps and key events, ensuring a coherent timeline was maintained. Outside the warehouse, under the cover of darkness, hidden microphones and cameras worked silently, capturing every available scrap of evidence that could later be used to unravel the criminal network operating within the city. Lisa's voice came through again, more urgent this time. "The meeting seems to be wrapping up. Several groups are heading towards the exits." "Maintain visual. Let them think they're clear before we move in," Michael calculated, preparing for the precise moment to intervene. His next command mobilized a select group of tactical officers. "Position teams at secondary exits. We funnel them towards primary for containment." As the operation neared its critical phase, Michael's experience and leadership were evident in every decision. His commands were crisp, his demeanor calm, yet there was an undercurrent of anticipation in his movements. The teams in the field adjusted their positions, readying for the order to converge on the warehouse. Every officer knew their role, the result of countless drills and briefings led by Michael. Back in the command center, the energy was palpable, a collective breath held as they awaited the moment to act. Michael stood before the main monitor, his silhouette cast in the blue light of the screens, a sentinel watching over the city's safety. As the warehouse meeting dwindled, the suspects began to emerge into the cool night air, their figures captured in sharp relief by the surveillance cameras. Captain Michael Johnson watched from the command center, every officer's movement coordinated with precision under his guidance. Detective Lisa Monroe's voice crackled over the radio, signaling the readiness of their teams. "All exit points are covered. They're funneling out as planned." "Wait for my mark. Hold steady," Michael murmured, his eyes scanning the live feeds, tracking each suspect as they moved unsuspectingly towards the containment trap set by his team. In the tech area, operators adjusted their equipment, enhancing video feeds and isolating audio clips that floated up from the tapped communications inside the warehouse. Key phrases were logged, each potentially an incriminating piece of the puzzle they were meticulously assembling. The drone operator quietly updated Michael on their positioning, keeping a bird's-eye view on the situation. "Elevated visuals are steady. We have clear shots of all exit routes. Keep it steady. We can't afford blind spots," Michael replied, his voice a low command that carried the weight of their operation's success. Simultaneously, a new update came through from an undercover officer embedded near the docks, providing a broader context to the gang's movements citywide. "Reports are coming in. Looks like some members are regrouping at a secondary location. We might need to expand surveillance." Acknowledging this, Michael weighed his options rapidly. "Monitor that situation closely. Update me the moment you have visuals." As the suspects continued to exit the warehouse, Michael gave the signal, his voice decisive over the radio. "Move in. Gentle and quiet. Let's wrap this up." The tactical teams advanced with trained precision, their movements silent shadows against the warehouse walls. Each step was calculated, with officers communicating through hand signals and muted whispers. Lisa coordinated the ground response, her directives firm and clear. "Teams Alpha and Bravo converge at points 3 and 4. Delta team, hold back until my go." From his vantage point in the command center, Michael observed the operation unfold, his strategic mind mapping out possible scenarios in real time. Adjustments were made on the fly, officers rerouting and responding to the dynamic situation. A sudden flurry of activity on one of the screens caught his attention. Several suspects had attempted a last-minute dash through a less guarded exit. "Camera 4, zoom in. Who do we have there?" The camera operator quickly focused on the escaping figures, their identities soon to be revealed by the high-resolution capture. "Got them, Captain. Looks like one of our key targets." "Redirect Delta Team to intercept. Do not let them get away," Michael ordered, his voice a sharp command that cut through the tension of the room. As the suspects were corralled and detained, each capture was methodically logged, ensuring that all procedural protocols were followed. The suspects were unaware of the extensive groundwork that had predicated their arrest, caught in a net woven from weeks of surveillance and intelligence gathering. Meanwhile, the broader implications of the night's work began to crystallize, with Michael already planning the next phases of interrogation and evidence review. The command center buzzed with a controlled chaos, a symphony of law enforcement precision that played out under Michael's experienced baton. With the suspects secured and the immediate threat contained, Captain Michael Johnson's team began the meticulous process of wrapping up the operation. The warehouse, now a scene of focused activity, was swarmed with forensic teams, each piece of evidence carefully cataloged and analyzed. Detective Lisa Monroe coordinated with the crime scene investigators, her demeanor a blend of relief and vigilance. "Make sure all evidence is documented and preserved. This is critical for the prosecution." Michael walked through the now empty warehouse, surveying the remnants of the night's tumult. The air was heavy with the scent of lingering tension and the faint smell of gunpowder. The warehouse's interior, once bustling with gang members, now stood as a silent testament to their operation. In the command center, officers debriefed and reviewed the night's operations, ensuring every step was meticulously recorded. Michael joined the briefing where the gathered team recounted the night's events, highlighting successes and areas for improvement. The lead tech officer summarized the intelligence gathered. "We intercepted several key conversations. The data points to a larger network of operations with ties extending beyond our city." Michael nodded, processing the information. "This operation has exposed a significant portion of their network. The next step is to ensure that all leads are followed up and that our arrests have a lasting impact." The officers began the task of preparing detailed reports and evidence for the district attorney's office. Michael reviewed the primary reports, checking for accuracy and completeness. The legal team would need solid groundwork for the cases against the detainees. As dawn approached, Michael took a moment to reflect on the night's success. The city's streets would be a little safer, the gangs slightly disoriented by the disruption. The team's hard work had paid off, but Michael knew this was only one battle in a larger war against organized crime. Lisa approached with a final update. "The suspects are being processed and we're starting the interviews. Preliminary intel suggests more connections to other criminal operations." "Excellent. Keep me posted on any new developments," Michael instructed. "Our work isn't over until every lead is exhausted." With the immediate crisis managed, Michael walked out of the precinct into the early morning light. The city was waking up, oblivious to the quiet but significant victory achieved during the night. For Michael and his team, the day would bring a new set of challenges, but the satisfaction of a job well done was palpable. As he drove home, the weight of the night's events settled over him, mingled with the anticipation of the ongoing efforts to dismantle the criminal networks further. Each arrest, each piece of evidence gathered, was a step towards a safer community. Michael arrived home, exhausted but content. He knew that the fight against crime was relentless and unyielding, but nights like these brought a sense of accomplishment and hope. The city's balance had been tipped, if only slightly, towards justice. The work was far from over, but for now, as Michael settled into a well-earned rest, he carried with him the knowledge that his team's dedication and skill had made a real difference in their ongoing struggle against crime.